done out of the 63,000 was to bring in, we dropped a few students and we brought in the ops coordinator to help with the admin and stuff. And we also, with our public works folks, brought in a marina manager slash truck driver. And the truck driver in public works, from when I was there, it's very tough to get a truck driver just for winter control because they would give a full-time job up and you never knew if you would get into the county. So that was a bit of a win-win too. And a lot of this led to supervision of the students. Don't get me wrong, students play a great part in CSD and we do rely on them, but when you're dealing with million-dollar boats and 18, 19-year-old kids running the show, that was the concern. I also had mentioned in the other report there were a couple incidents where there was an individual had called me the following day and they were sailing around Long Point, bad storm, they wanted a place to come in for the night. Again, it was students were running the marina that day and their reply was, we're full. Well, this guy was mad. It was a dangerous situation. He should have been able to come in and anchor for the night. And I mean, a student just doesn't have the gray hair, the wrinkles, that sort of thing to make the call. So a lot of this was to bring in, so we still depend on students. However, we have more supervision. I mean, these kids are running lawnmowers, weed eaters, pumping gas, that sort of thing. You do need the supervision. So a lot of it was to keep the students as our main labor pool, however, have the supervision. Also, one thing I may ask for finance folks is, this shows a net levy increase of $63,000. To Mayor Chop's comment, yes, our marinas, Port Dover does make money. I believe it's $500,000 a year roughly, which 250 go directly to the reserve and 210 I believe council was taking and putting on the levy. So although it costs $63,000 more to run the Port Dover Marina with these new initiatives, we also, through our user fees last year, increased user fees, which I believe $25,000 to $30,000 more came in there. So I'm just saying, as for me, the $63,000, if I can melt that down and look at our finance folks, I don't think it is a direct increase, but I will stand corrected if it is.
Through the mayor, we'll have to look into the budget. I don't have the details up right now to see what you're referring to. I know we do the transfer to the reserve, a lump sum amount, but we'll have a look at it for you.
The only reason I mentioned that is last council, that was part of the selling point, that it wasn't necessarily on the levy, but we'll look forward to the reply on that. So
we'll also review the report then too.
Mr. Cridlin, have you ever considered a municipal service board to run both marinas as opposed to just creating another management layer here of reporting?
Through the mayor, yes. In early 2017, before my time here, there was talk that there was a municipal, different set of boards which were involved with the marina. And in 2017, the council had decided to keep the marina and keep it in business, run it as a municipal operation under community services. And through that process, we do have an advisory board committee that we meet with a dozen or 5-6 times a year. So that was the decision made in the past to not go with a municipal services board or anything like that for it to be ran as a municipal operation.
For myself, I just can't see when I read net levy impact at the bottom here of the 63,000. That just concerns me. And I get burnout and so on, but also when you're talking about a seasonal operation, I worked in a seasonal operation for a long time. You work hard during the months, that you're working, and then the beauty of that is you get a bunch more free time in the winter. So I don't know, that seems like a big added cost for a restructuring when a restructuring should be reducing costs. Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to staff. Mr. Cridlin, you mentioned that the Port Dover Marina makes money. Do I take it then that the Port Rowan Marina does not?
Through the mayor to the councillor, and I guess I passed this up. Part of this reorg was having staff go back and forth between the two marinas, because before this, Port Rowan stood as a separate operation unit and Port Dover stood as a separate operation unit. And at that time, Port Dover made the money. Port Rowan was did not make money. So again, we increased user fees there. But the other beauty of this is the marina manager now, both marinas, Port Rowan and Dover, report directly to that manager. So bass fishing weekend in Port Rowan is really busy. So in the past, they would struggle to get staff because the staffing couldn't handle it, so now staff can come from Dover to do that. At the same time, Potahawk weekend and things are big in Dover, quiet in Port Rowan, so at that time the students are able to transfer back over. So it did, we did merge the two together. And just back to Mayor Chop's comment about they are long hours seasonally. However, our marina manager being full-time, once the fall starts, she's booking boats, taking registrations, that sort of thing. So it is a 12-month-a-year job in that position.
I get that, but how does a restructuring, I mean, when you restructure, it's supposed to reduce your costs and create efficiencies. How does a restructuring cost the marina $63,000 more a year? That's when marina fees go up even more for people. Eventually, it's got to come out of somebody's pocket. And they're both running right now. If we're looking at restructuring, let's look at bringing down costs, not driving them up.
I guess my only answer to that is when we reviewed this, being run by students and only one time full-time staff for a $1 million marina, that was the issue we brought forward to council. And by bringing the two more part-time, they're both seasonal positions, that allowed us to bring the two together, give oversight in Port Rowan. And we were understaffed to begin with, and that was the whole flex behind the reorg.
What about mileage and all of these things when they're driving back and forth between the marinas, if they're shuffling people around? Where does that all fit into this component with hiring two other people?
The only position, the marina manager would definitely have some travel to Port Rowan and back. And I think at the time it's fairly minor.
Do you know by chance how much for with the boathouses down in Port Rowan? Like, do you have any idea what we're receiving? Because we own that property underneath of them, correct?
That is correct. I think I'll turn it over to Nikki Sloat, who has more information on the boathouse leases in Port Rowan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the boathouse revenue that we generate each year is approximately $37,000.
And do you know, how does MPAC do the assessments on the boathouses?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that one I would have to turn over to the tax department.
And to my knowledge, people aren't allowed to, I know there's somebody in there that has quite the place, but people generally aren't allowed to renovate and so on and develop these further. Like, I mean, if we started allowing people to fix them up, I just, because we're talking about Port Rowan, I've always had this question in my mind, so sorry to bring it up right now, but.
Through you, Madam Mayor, through the contract and the lease agreement that they do have, there are stipulations in it that they must adhere to all the Norfolk County bylaws, policies, anything like that when it comes to any type of renovation.
It's another revenue source, I think, that we should look at. Councillor Huffman, sorry.
Through you, Mayor, to finance and to Bill, I guess. So what, you said X number of dollars are put into the reserves, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And maybe I missed this and I apologize, but how is that amount determined, that they put in $250,000 into reserves?
Through the mayor to Councillor Huffman. Currently, we are putting what has been approved as a contribution from previous council direction was to the Port Rowan Marina Reserve is just an annual contribution of $30,000, and that is actually to combat the deficit that reserve fund is in, and that was a result of a report that we brought forward to council in 2017. We did a comprehensive review on reserve and reserve funds that a number of recommendations were approved right away, and there were a number of recommendations for staff to move forward and come back with further information on, like, for example, a reserve and reserve fund policy and a debt fund policy, and do the development, implement the development charge study earlier, that type of thing. The Port Rowan Marina, or Port Dover Marina, we have contributed $210,000 annually since I can remember. It hasn't changed, that amount hasn't changed. So that is one of the, I can't remember the actual recommendation when we did the comprehensive reserve, but I would imagine that the recommendation is to review the capital assets at the Port Dover Marina and come back with a recommendation of what a minimal amount that we should contribute to the reserve to ensure that the reserve is healthy and we can replace all our infrastructure we currently have.
Okay.
The
I just want to say, so, okay, I understand how that works. I wasn't sure why that amount was picked, and I understand that now. And then obviously, I'm a proponent for a very healthy reserve. But I guess my question is that, why would we have a department putting X number of dollars into the reserve and then needing to apply money to the levy? That doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm too simplified when I think of finances. But my other recommendation in regards to this position into this situation would be to hire a summer student as the supervisor or some kind of scheduler or something like that. That would be a feasibility. And I know it's always lovely when people who don't do your job tell you how to do it.
No, my only comment with the summer student is we're open from April till mid-October, and that's where it's tough to find a summer student. I will touch base maybe on, to help with some of the confusion. The marina makes, we'll stay with Port Dover, makes a little over $500,000 a year, and that's pretty annual. It's there, it's consistent. We have X amount of slots, and they're full. And so the money that goes into the reserve is generated from the marina, so it's not a cost from CSD going in. It makes $500,000. Half of that, or I guess 210,000, Kathy's corrected me, goes into the reserve each year, and the other half comes back to the levy, and I believe it just goes to the general levy, but I may not be. So it actually, if you look, it reduces our taxes by a quarter point each budget year, because it makes the $250,000.
No, don't get me wrong, I believe the marina is a valuable asset for Norfolk County. I don't want to see it go anywhere, but what I definitely would like to see is the possibility of the creation of a municipal board to run the marinas, because again, I don't think that municipalities were meant to be in the marina business, and they would then continue to pay a dividend back to Norfolk County, and we would be able to let them run the marinas as they see fit to make them real revenue generating entities and bring the money back to the county without having to be involved in every aspect of it. Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think staff's on the right track. Let's merge the two facilities, try to get that efficiency. I like that idea of, you need a guy there 9 months or a person there 9 months of the year, but we keep him on the other 3 months in a different department. That's always a great way to do it. But I suggest, I will make a motion, we pull this, carry on doing what you're doing, just fund it out of operations, and at the end of the year, let us know how things went, You're making a profit of $500,000. You don't need $63,000 of tax levy money to become more efficient.
Councillor Shelley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in response to Councillor Van Passen's comment, and this then will be to staff, you have mentioned that the Port Dover Marina makes about $500,000. And you also mentioned that the Port Rowan Marina does not make money. What's the total of profit or earnings that the two marinas make per year?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we may have to get back to you on the exact number. It was my understanding that there was 30,000, as Kathy had mentioned, came out of the levy and went into the reserve for Port Rowan. So, and what that is for, councillor, is after, I think it's 8 years, maybe 9 years of 30,000 a year, the reserve for Port Rowan would be in the positive, and Dover continues to make the 500,000. The other thing I may add with this is, this resolution was in March 20 of 2018, thank you, Nikki, And so we have had 1 year with these extra 2 seasonal staff, and they were very positive. It did help with the hours the manager was working. It helped with coverage. It helped with synergies between the 2 marinas. I'm not sure. We have, postings for students have already gone out. The coordinator, I believe the ops coordinator have went out as well. So if there is to be a change this year, maybe have to have a little more dialogue on how we move forward. So I know I've given you more information than you asked for, but I just wanted to bring those points up. We've had 1 year operating under this pilot.
Secondary, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Cridlin. That wasn't too much information. It's what I kind of need. So with that in mind, and I realize you'll have to go back and get the numbers, but would you say, just for today's discussion, that Councillor Van Passen's suggestion would still work, that there would still be enough operating money there to go ahead and do that?
Through the mayor, just so I'm clear, I'm going to say yes, but I want to make sure of what Councillor Van Passen had said. Is it to move forward as we did last year, Councillor Van Passen? And because last year's operations included these two positions, which equal the $63,000 to go.
If they were approved last year, then why are they here now in 2019 impacting the levy?
Through the mayor, I believe it's because they were council-approved initiatives.
Oh, at that point, okay. I see.
It happened in
I thought you meant you were using them as well last year.
we were.
You
They
did?
were approved last year.
And you used them last year?
Last year, and I can tell you from a staffing perspective, it was a success. Things are working. Why are they in front of you today? Okay, Nikki's telling me because they weren't part of the 2017 budget, they're part of the 2018 budget, and I guess that makes them, I'll say fair game, or you're able to look at them and reassess sort of thing.
Okay, Councillor Van Passen.
Well, that is my intent, my intention is to run those 2 as efficiently as possible, juggle the staff the best way possible, make the county as much money possible. If you're turning a profit of $500,000, hopefully you'll be able to absorb this and still turn the profit of $500,000 through more efficiencies and all that. But I'm not going to hand over levy dollars to pay for a job and then you hand levy dollars back to us as a dividend. That just serves no purpose, right? So carry on. You're going in the right direction. You're getting things shifted around. You're doing exactly what we're expecting. Take the initiative, do something different, and let's go with it. But deal with it within your own budget already, the operations that you have.
House Summers, did you want to ask the repercussions?
Mr. Cridlin, I know that in past years we have contributed significant capital dollars towards the Port Rowan Marina. Do you recall how much we've invested to upgrade what was there? I think it was dredging and a lot of other things.
Through the mayor, that's probably a question we could get back to you tomorrow on, because it's going to take a little bit of research.
So this marina loses money year after year after year. Just wonder, probably if it was operated by a private enterprise, it might even break even or make money. By some other marina that's in business along the lake now, they just compile it in their operation, just like we're talking about Port Dover amalgamation. So has there been any thought about ever unloading this property and getting some cash dollars?
To the mayor, through the councillor. This is, again, before my time, but had been discussed at many meetings. There actually are consultant reports which came in and looked at both marinas, made recommendations, and previous councils had looked at them. And I believe as far as Port Rowan, the recommendation was that Port Rowan, it would be very tough to make it a viable marina, just for the fact that it's very limited for expansion, no amenities, that sort of thing. So previous councils decided to keep both marinas, keep them municipally run, and I guess that's about all I can say. I mean, we've got the directive to run both marinas, look for efficiencies, which we have, and as of today, both marinas are operated under the CSD department.
Thank you. Maybe that's something we should just park and look at later about having it sold off as a private enterprise.
Well, I think not necessarily even sold off, but even a municipal board, give it to somebody to go and run a group of people and pay Norfolk County back. It saves Mr. Cridlin being involved, it saves the finance department from being involved, and we just get a paycheck cut to us every summer at the end of the year. How would you like to proceed with this? Councillor Van Passen? Seconded by Councillor Huffman. Any further discussion? All those, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Just one comment that I do realize that we've had data from March 20th of 2018. Just wanted to acknowledge that it isn't a full year worth of data. We got about 9 months that we can review, and you can only manage what you can measure. We've only been measuring the impacts of the change for about 9 months, and I think it would be in order down the road for us to have a staff report once we've actually had what I would consider to be a full year of data or a full season. We're talking about the opening, the winterization of the boats, and if we're talking about a marina that in effect is a 12-month operation, specifically with the manager being responsible in that area, that we really don't have enough data to measure the impacts of the change that has already taken place. And I just want to acknowledge that I think it's a little bit putting the cart before the horse to say we've had a full review of what's taken place with the merger of these two operations.
For myself, right now I see this as a net levy impact to the taxpayers, and I don't see why the taxpayers should be having to pay for profitable marinas. We often talk about people with the subsidization, and people in the municipal systems shouldn't be subsidizing holding tank users and so on. This is an even more prime example. This isn't even an essential service. This is a marina that's making money, and we're putting a $63,000 impact on the tax levy. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Mr. Cridlin. The motion states to pay for this through operations. That's very much so doable.
Through the mayor, the councillor, I don't know and again, I cannot direct council, I can recommend. I think we should park this or maybe go to finance, because I think for council to make an informed decision, to me, I think there's an fundamental issue with the 63,000 being on the levy. And if I am wrong, I mean, I will stand corrected. I just think that's a fundamental we need to establish. And James, anything you can add to that point?
Thank you. So through the mayor to Councillor, Taylor, or Rabbits, was it? I don't know, somebody. So the reason why there's a hit is because we're taking less revenue as a result. And in order to have a zero impact, we would have to essentially reduce the reserve contribution. If you want a 0% levy impact on this $63,000, you'd have to reduce the reserve contribution in order to get that. Because you have the same amount of revenue no matter what. So that's why when we have this new budget initiative, that's why there's a hit to the levy, because you're taking we're taking less of the revenue into our surplus by doing this. So that's why there's a hit to the levy. And but if and another reason why we didn't suggest reducing the reserve is because the reserve is a capital replacement reserve, and this is an operating expense. So that's another reason why we wouldn't recommend reducing the reserve for this, because it's more of an operating expense rather than a capital expenditure.
Councillor Van Passen.
We'd better get some lessons in private sector business where you rearrange operations and become more profitable, and you make the same amount of profit by rearranging your operations and doing them more cheaply. So to say, well, we can't change the revenue. Yeah, we do a better job and we make more money. Then you don't have to spend as much. We got to get this mindset changed a little bit here.
Exactly. I would agree. We should be making more revenue if we're adding somebody else on the books. Otherwise, what was the point? So does your motion stand, or And can you just repeat your motion again? Okay, that goes a little bit contrary to what you just said in terms of making more revenue in order to add somebody else on there. If we're, would you prefer that to Mr. Johnson's suggestion, that it would be that we decrease that amount then going into the Port Dover Marina reserves, which is really what would, I know, I just think with the accounting piece that there's something here that you're, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There was a suggestion to park this until we can get the full financial implications in front of us to truly make that decision.
Well, I think Mr. Johnson's just explained it very well, actually. The reason that we're seeing a levy impact, because let's say last year we made $500,000. This year, because of this position, we're going to make $500,000 less $63,000. So the $63,000, when they had that revenue, the way that they're doing their accounting, when they had that revenue line coming in under the marina, now that revenue line is still there, just the same, but they've taken away this position. So that's how they're showing the net levy impacts, because the Port Dover taxpayers are no longer going to get the same amount of money. They're not getting, we're not raising revenues by adding this position. Revenues are staying flat. So I think, for myself, I think that's already been cleared up. Next, Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I heard Mr. Cridland, his last couple sentences were that he'd like to take a further look at this and get some clarification on the levy impact, I thought I heard him say, and see what he can come up with more additional information. So if that's the case, I think we should defer this item for further discussion during the budget session.
If I may, and Mr. Johnson, maybe you could help me out here. That was what you were addressing, was Mr. Cridland's, he has addressed the component. There is an impact on the levy because there is a reduction in 63,000 out of the income line on the marinas that we would have been receiving. So to be fair, I think that your question is addressed. It's just that you're not liking the way that it's written, but that's not going to change the impact on the levy because you're not bringing in 500,000 anymore. You're bringing in 500,000 less 63,000.
Through the mayor, Mr. Johnson answered that. I guess my last talk will be, councillors make a lot of sense. If you put things together, realign, you would expect a cost savings. When we went into this project, we had liabilities with students not being supervised. And the intention at that time was, it was just part of it. We had liabilities with our staff were working. And there was no talk at that time with the council to ever close hours down, to keep the marina going. So I just want council to know that when we put this together, it was not a cost savings. There was other things that came into this. And I can tell you too, this year down at the Port Dover Marina, we had a meeting and we ended up, our marina manager is sitting over here. I believe we had another 80 boats for winter storage this year. Approximately $40,000 extra were being brought in. So, I mean, staff are doing what we can to run this like a business and take advantage of every opportunity we can. And I can say part of that was having, staff available to meet with folks, even putting 80 more boats in. It took extra staff. So having the people to run the day-to-day stuff opens up time for a manager. So there are some intangibles here. One other thing I'd like to say is if this could be deferred, there is some talk here with their HR folks about the, one of the two positions, whether it is a seasonal or part-time, and that's just something we're scrambling here to get information on. I don't know if it would change council's opinion of what they want to do today, but I think it may be another piece of this to bring back, and I think as early as tomorrow where council was to deal with it during the session. And with that, I'll leave it for council's decision.
Can I just say just one little point to that? So if you had 5 people working out in Port Rowan, 5 students, and you felt that because of liability purposes and so on, they're doing their job, but they don't have somebody out there supervising them. I get that. So you add in a supervisor, but then really what should have happened is there should have been one less student position. It's not that we should have been adding another position because the marina was running itself at the exact same capacity. You just said that there's no room to grow in Port Rowan. So if this was a private sector business, you wouldn't just go and add somebody else to the fold. You would remove somebody because you felt you needed somebody with more maturity or whatever the reason would be to be there at the marina with them.
My answer to that, we did drop, I believe it was 3 or 4 student positions.
So
to
we
get-
dropped 3 or 4 student positions and we still are adding 63,000?
To get the supervision that we needed at Dover, that's correct.
We're in the wrong business. Okay.
That was taking those student positions and turning them into a full-time position, correct? Or,
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
We had
all right.
this many students, we went to here, enabling to get the
Okay.
the part-time positions.
all right.
But
Okay.
then that kind of flies in the face of the $63,000 impact argument that you made.
So is there a motion on the floor?
Yes.
Okay. Can we vote on it? Second it? I mean, yeah, can we do it? I got lost. I'm confused.
Councillor Van Passen,
So
you want to
it's
repeat it one more
discussion.
time? The motion is that the new budget initiative of $63,000 related to the restructuring of the marinas be removed and that the position be funded from the revenues of the marina. All those in favor?
Madam Mayor, I would like to put a motion on the floor to defer the discussion to further budget.
Okay, is there a seconder
discussion.
for the deferral? Councillor Michelli, any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Now, I see, we've got, some people need to leave here around between 4 and 4:30 today. Would it be prudent for you guys, for us to kind of jump into your department while you're, so you don't have to come back tomorrow in case we don't get to it? Should we kind of skip over maybe Public Works and then? Would that help everybody out or no?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This is our CSD staff, and we have did the council-approved initiatives, and now I believe we'll move into the,
Oh, we're right there anyway.
yeah, and
Okay,
that's
my
why
bad, sorry.
that's why these individuals are
Sorry,
here.
I
so,
was
yep.
thinking under, okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Appreciate that.
Okay. So just for clarification, we're reviewing the MBIs for CSD at this point in time, on pages 37 to 45. Correct?
Oh, sorry, Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Just a comment. I want to acknowledge that on page 42, we can see what it costs to lease a vehicle as opposed to buying a brand-new pickup truck. It's a significant cost savings, and I want to acknowledge that staff's done a good job. I know those parks, forestry trucks, they do take quite a beating when they're out there in the bush, and I think that that is a very diligent use of resources.
Would, just a question on that one, would forestry staff, given it's just seasonal and we've got some vehicles that we're retiring that we just went through in the capital budget at 7 years, my truck's older than 7 years, would forestry staff not be able to take one of those trucks instead?
Through the mayor, Chris Baird with the Fleet Division could probably answer that. Public Works. Thanks, Chris.
Madam Mayor, in most cases, the pickup trucks that are being traded in or taken off the road have in excess of 400,000 kilometers and are in really poor condition. I would think these trucks would still be generating some miles and require some reliability requirements, but perhaps certainly not a new truck. So I also agree that the lease option is the way to go for some of these that might fit that perfect use.
Councillor Van Passen?
Well, I'm not so sure $28,000 for a leased one is a good deal, and the new ones are 35. This is for 1 year, right? It's, or unless I'm reading it wrong.
Councillor Martin?
I also wonder if it's just worth noting, we did pass a motion where I directed Councillor Van Passen to perform fleet review, and would it not make more sense to have a fleet review prior to then leasing or additionally amending this to look at purchasing something new?
Sure. I'm also curious as well why we need an additional truck this year. It's not, I think the lease is great, as Ian properly pointed out, and this cost would be baked in other parks and forestry trucks, but this particular one is reflecting an additional vehicle that wasn't there before. So I'm just wondering why we need another one.
Through the chair, as the write-up is, we have three, I'm going to get this right here, 3 full-time forestry staff and 1 9-month position. And I believe, I'll look at Todd Shoemaker, I believe we have one pickup truck, Todd, for that group. So there's times when operations are held up because that truck is busy with the other staff. And at the same time, when we looked at our Simcoe operations, for the park side, there were times that they needed a truck. So instead of coming to council with two trucks wanted, we decided it was best if we could get one, and park staff could use it in their summertime when they're busy cutting grass, attending their parks, and in the winter time when the park staff were more in the marina or arenas and facilities, that is when forestry staff could take advantage of that truck. So kind of a dual purpose truck would be used definitely 12 months a year and help out the shortage of vehicles. Anything else to add, Mr. Shoemaker? Good.
Councillor Van Passen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. $28,000 a year. For last fall, we tendered for 8 pickup trucks that cost $34,000. Why wouldn't you buy a pickup truck that should be good for 7 or 8 or 9 years, not lease one for a year at 28? You know, this is a kind of request that should have been in the capital budget, not on the operating line. Again, unless I'm missing something here, like, go buy the truck for $34,000, not lease it for 1 year and for 28. Makes no sense.
Through the mayor to the councillor, it was our understanding that it was $14,000 a year to lease, not 28. I'm not sure if finance or public works, because I totally agree with the councillor. When I see the 28 there, it does confuse me as well. My understanding going into this, it was $14,000 a year for the truck.
So it's hitting the levy in another department then. Councillor Geisens?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I believe the material supplies and services would be the rental or the lease, and the interdepartmental charges are the interdepartmental charges.
The interdepartmental.
Chop, that would include fuel and maintenance and insurance, all of those additional items.
Councillor Huffman?
Okay, this is making absolutely no sense to me. I apologize. So we would be leasing, I would assume, a brand-new truck. So it would be a 2019. And then why would we, $14,000 towards maintenance and things like that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe there's something missing, maybe there needs to be some more information, so I would be willing to put a motion on the floor that we defer this until tomorrow, until some actual clarification can come up where that other $14,000 is, what it's in there for.
Do you have a seconder for the motion? Unless, Mr. Johnson, are you guys able to pull that right now with the interdepartmental charge?
Madam Mayor, I think it'd be better if we put our heads together and talked about it in the morning.
Okay. Seconder? Councillor Martin, all those in favor? That's carried. Okay, then one I want to go back to is just, again, I cannot support this. The hire a permanent part-time recreation program inclusion coordinator at 0.6 of an FTE for $55,100. This may be something that we need to do, but I think that we need to take a serious look of what services we are offering. We are continuing to offer yoga programs when we have a yoga business in Simcoe. I won't stop on that one. We need to rejuggle and rejig the people that we have within that department that can maybe go and do things like this that are helping people with disabilities, and let's get out of those businesses that compete with the private sector. So for me, for 0.6 of an FTE as a coordinator at $55,100 is crazy.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I'd like to just take this the opportunity, I'll be quick, to introduce Susie Ray, programming supervisor, and I will let Susie lead the discussion for this item.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I'm grateful for the opportunity to introduce this NBI once again. I feel like a bit of a dog with a bone on this. I think I'll be back every year to sort of bend an ear on this. Hopefully, this year will be the lucky year. So I appreciate your comments, Mayor Chop, and I believe that's probably a quite common reaction when we're talking about inclusion. What we really need is a subject matter expert in this area. So we have, I completely agree with us taking an inventory of the programs and the services we offer to not compete with private businesses. I feel that we do that and will continue to evolve and grow. What we need to do now is to serve our participants better. So I'm hoping you've had a chance to read this, but I think we capture it fairly well in our justification. This is going to be tough because I'm asking for us to lose money, but improve quality of life for our citizens. So we do have the opportunity to kind of put our money where our mouth is. So Norfolk County offers a commitment to accessibility through policy, yet we lack the resources to do so without the subject matter experts to deliver the services to meet the commitment to our accessibility. I think, though, I don't want to undersell what we do. I think we do a great job in recreation to meet the needs of the folks that we service. Although without those subject matter experts, so therapeutic recreationists, perhaps even developmental service workers, we do open ourselves up and subject ourselves to human rights litigation and perhaps, other litigation as well. So I think there are benefits. I think we can put ourselves on the map and be progressive to enhance service delivery, to ensure all persons have access to play with the appropriate supports. We can be collaborative, continue to be collaborative, so build on the partnerships we have with local service agencies, social service agencies and providers. Certainly to provide increased quality of life by removing barriers to participation, making sure programs are safe, having the skilled staff, making sure not only the participants are safe, but the staff are safe. Some drawbacks to deferral, and this is where the quality of life, I think, comes in, is that you can't defer a disability. Your disability is there today, you wake up tomorrow, your disability is there tomorrow, and that's really hard to discuss with a parent of a child who has a disability, who this may be their last summer to attend a summer camp with their classmates. Asking them to wait another year to hopefully have the resource in place may eliminate that opportunity for that child. Again, it promotes inefficiency, so lacking the specialized staff to act as a conduit for inclusion support. We certainly can take our current complement of staff, retrain, re-educate to be able to provide enhanced service. We don't currently have that specialized service in our existing complement of staff. And in doing that, we would then have to sacrifice some services that we do currently deliver. So we'd have to take a review, see what we do, where we're going to trim our programs and services to be able to re-educate some current staff, if that's even an applicable option. That's been kicked around before, and we do it. We make it work. No child or no participant will be left without service. So the other tough issue is lack of funding. So there are some envelopes and some pockets of money available to support inclusion support programming, but they really focus on how you're going to make it sustainable. So in that vein, if we have an inclusion support coordinator, we've got to focus on how we're going to make sure our programs are accessible and inclusive. We can justify, yes, we can apply for this funding because we have the backing and the position in place to make sure it's carried forward. There's checks and balances. It can be measured and justified, and it gives a bit more depth and some more teeth to our funding proposals. So there are a couple options for consideration, I suppose, that I put in front of you, and really hope you see this as an exciting opportunity, is to provide one permanent part-time inclusion support coordinator that will influence the rest of our department, be able to educate our part-time staff, affect our aquatics programming as well, and hopefully then this can evolve and branch out to affect other departments who offer similar programming. I think there's some real efficiencies that we can find here, or maintain status quo and not enhance service delivery, kind of keeping us in the same position where we're at, where we promise accessible offerings, but we're without the resource to provide them. So it's a tricky situation. We're really hoping that we can improve some service for our participants.
I guess my further comment to that, though, would be, I mean, this is for a coordinator. This is somebody to organize things and so on. I mean, this comes back to my original point. It's the frontline people that we need. You may need somebody that's specialized in dealing with somebody with accessibility issues and offering, whatever activities or so on that they do. But I want to see when we're hiring people at this point, that we're not hiring another manager in that capacity, that we're hiring people that are actually, delivering these types of programs. I believe that we have staff that are capable of, like you said, kind of, switching some things around and getting out of some things and freeing up a person's time that's coordinating stuff that maybe we shouldn't be coordinating, and saying, okay, this is a need in Norfolk County. Let's focus our people on this. And then, let's figure out, let's focus on the service delivery part, not the layers of supervision above it. And that's just my point. But Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unless this is specifically mandated by the province, I would move that it be taken out, please.
Seconder, Councillor Huffman.
No, I'm not seconding it. I have comments.
Seconder, Councillor Michelli. Discussions, Councillor Huffman.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Columbus first, and then Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to Susie. This $55,100 represents 0.6 FTE, is that right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it does.
So if we had one full-time FTE, it would be like 40% more, I guess, right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct.
So that's not because it just starts in April, is it? Is that why we've got 0.6, and then next year it would be one full-time equivalent at, say, 80,000?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, it's requested to be a permanent part-time position, which will, further to your point, Mayor Chop, would be very much a hands-on position. It would be within programs, leading by example, on the floor with the children, hands-on participation and facilitation of program and service delivery.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Any further discussion, Councillor Huffman?
Through you, Mayor, to staff. Okay, earlier I spoke that this would be the position that I would go to the mat for. So I'll make that clear. I'm not going to, this was one of the things in terms of my campaign, and this is one of the things that I've talked about for years and years. So, and I've chosen to be a part of the accessibility committee. I've also had, as a parent, I've had children work in that, in the summer programs. And I cannot emphasize enough how often there were lack of supports, and once you hit that ground running, when those doors open to when those doors close, to try and backtrack and get something else in place, it is virtually impossible when you are frontline staff in the summer programs. And having done this for my career as well in social services, the lack of funding that goes into any kind of inclusion is extremely minimal, and I don't think that as a county we have put a lot of money into that. There's something, you know, called social capital and complete communities. I can go on and on and on. So I would, I don't know. I completely support this position, and in terms of the children that utilize this, and I think Susie probably knows that there's some probably specific things I would like to be able to put my 2 cents in worth in terms of being able to access future, like training during the not so busy season and getting things lined up for staff training and stuff prior to the summer hiring. But anyways, so those are my 2 cents.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the envelopes of money that were alluded to only be applied for once this position is established? We don't know what kind of funding would be out there, but we know it exists.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, they're certainly available. And we have applied for funding in the past to obviously take the burden off the taxpayers. We just haven't been successful, and I believe that is in part due to the sustainability of this piece.
Councillor Martin.
Do these thank you, Mayor Chop, through you to staff, do these programs then turn around and require a user fee to be paid for participation?
Okay. Through Mayor Chop to Councillor Martin, we do have user fees set through our user fee bylaw that do accompany participation. So the day camp rate is the same. Currently, right now, if children, and I'll speak to day camp specifically, it's where it's a bit more prominent. Currently, as it sits right now, if a child were to register for program, they'd pay the day camp rate. If they had a respite worker or some other folks that were able to attend with them, obviously that's encouraged. We are taking note of local municipalities who do waive their fees for children with special needs, but as it stands right now, the fees are consistent across the board.
Any further discussion? Okay, so it was moved by Councillor Van Passen, it was seconded by Councillor Michelli. All those in favor? Okay, and that is defeated, I believe. Opposed? I guess sorry, I did that wrong. Opposed? All those opposed?
Yeah, that was
That the new budget initiative for an inclusion support coordinator in the amount of $54,100 be removed from the 2019 budget.
Okay, let's try it from the beginning again. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My apologies, that's carried.
Okay. If there's no more questions related to the Community Services Department or Division's NBIs, we'll move into Public Works. Public Works on page 46 has one CAI, and the details are on page 47. If there's no further questions, we'll move into the NBIs on page, it starts on page 48 for Public Works to page 51. Given there's no questions at this,
Okay, so question, I just want to double check. So if I'm looking at the dam inspections, I can be asking questions about that right now, correct? Okay. So, through Mayor Chop, through to staff. Is that okay?
Okay,
All
yeah,
right.
of course.
So $80,000 on the books for the dam inspections. My understanding is that some of these have already been completed. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, Councillor, we have 20 dams that Norfolk County owns, and there's about 54 altogether, and those would be owned by the province, the Conservation Authority, and private dams. These are dams and what we call water control structures. So we have done assessments, obviously, on the Meisner Dam, and we've done assessment on the Quants Dam, which is down here behind the former LCBO on the river, and as well in Waterford in Ward 7. I have some initial looks at them. But the purpose of this NBI is to, dams are an asset that we really haven't done much work with, and we're starting to realize, I think, as council can appreciate, there's a lot of unknown. There's more underground that you don't see in terms of assessing these. So as part of our asset management plan, we want to make sure that we're not throwing good money after bad. We'd like to know the condition of our dams so we can develop a program that in time, it might be a 20 or 30-year program where we do one dam a year or a couple of minor items, or in some cases, could they be decommissioned if they're smaller or less important. So the purpose of this, again, is to get a snapshot in time of everything that we own and develop a maintenance strategy to go forward.
Okay. And the reason I was asking about some of them being done is because when I was looking at initiatives deferred by SLT, I was confused. It's on the last page, page 60. It specifically says Waterford Dam Review to study the Waterford Dam to address public access and dam operation. And that was an annualized budget impact of $150,000. So I'm unclear as to why there would have been an additional $150,000 if there was already something in here at $80,000.
Sure, that's a great question, Mayor Chop, through the mayor. When this budget was put together, there was the assessment piece and as well as some work that we have to do at the Waterford Dam. And it was suggested before we start doing work on dams, let's look at all of our inventory to make sure that we're spending the right amount of money on the right, the worst first sort of thing. So it was suggested here that we would defer the Waterford Dam review for 1 year, and for $80,000 get the other 20 plus looked at so that we could develop a plan, and it may indeed be up fairly high.
Okay, because my impression is that the actual repair to the Waterford Dam is actually only about a $35,000 repair. So anyways, here nor there, I'm sure we'll come to that issue at some point in time.
That's correct.
Okay.
The assessment that we have on it, there are some very minor things that talk about restricting pedestrian access and some signage, things that we can do for relatively little cost. But if we do have to get into some major rehabilitation work, we want to make sure that, is that where we need to do it first, or could that wait for 5 years, something like that? So it's just prioritizing a maintenance plan for all the dams.
Isn't this something that's also under Long Point's fold, Councillor Columbus? It doesn't Long Point, didn't we just have this big discussion the other day that they have all the dams listed?
Yes, we have Long Point Region Conservation Authority actually I believe, owns 13 water control structures.
And we own 54?
There are 54 dams, Mayor, in Norfolk County, and 20 are owned by Norfolk County, and the others are shared between the province, the conservation authorities, and some are private.
Okay. Councillor Rabbits, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Columbus. Thanks for answering that.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through the chair, Chris, I know that we had a dam fail in Normingdale in 2009, and I'm concerned that we still haven't had a full review of the fallout from that, and I'm concerned maybe we haven't even learned any lessons from what took place there. And I wanted to know, since we've had outstanding consultants' reports that have been paid for, not presented to this council, is there any information